Police confirming to us that the 911 caller last night around 8 o'clock was a young girl who was home when the violent attack happened. Police had to force their way inside the home. We've learned that the boy was found unresponsive.
Welcome back. I'm Cassie and this is A Wicked World. Before we get into today's story, I have a quick announcement for you. Since A Wicked World has been so solely focused on children's stories, I've decided to start another channel, and the new channel is called Wicked Ways. There, I'm going to be focusing on more adult cases and other true crimes. Right now, there's only one video over there, but I intend on uploading a new video to that channel at least once a week. So go ahead and check it out, and I'll leave the link in the description box below as well. So the story I have for you today is about a little boy who was horrifically murdered for something that he couldn't help, all while his little sister and mother watched on helplessly. This is the story of Jose Pepe Castillo Cisneros. Jose Castillo Cisneros was lovingly called Pepe, and he was born on May 16, 2013, to his mother Yadira Cisneros. He had one older sister and one younger brother. Pepe had just recently started to attend school, and his family had just recently found out that he was autistic. And due to these developmental delays that Pepe faced, he was still nonverbal by the age of 3. So in order for him to communicate, Pepe would often scream and cry. However, he was still a happy, sweet, playful, and mischievous little boy who also loved anything Mickey Mouse. Yadira and her children had moved to their home in Battleground, Washington at the beginning of 2016. There, they lived with the children's grandparents, Yadira's mother and father. Then in March of 2016, shortly before Yadira would give birth to her youngest son, her boyfriend and baby's father, Ricardo, would move into the home as well. Pepe's mother, Yadira, and her boyfriend, Ricardo Gutierrez, had started dating in 2015, but had broken up for a little while. Then they had gotten back together and had their new baby in April of 2016. But Pepe's mother, Yadira, had a troubling relationship with Ricardo. He was very controlling of her. And he was absolutely fixated on the idea that she was possibly being unfaithful to him, so he had her under constant surveillance. And this was even though Yadira had never even given Ricardo a reason to be suspicious. On the night of May 23, 2016, Pepe's older sister went to her room to watch a movie, and Pepe decided to join. But since he was only a toddler, a little ways into the movie, Pepe began to grow bored and started to cry. Crying, he decided to walk over to his mother in Ricardo's room, where Ricardo was watching TV and relaxing. Yadira was washing the dinner dishes when all of a sudden she heard her son upstairs crying. So she stopped what she was doing and walked upstairs to see what was wrong. But when she got upstairs, she did not expect to see what she saw. Yadira saw her boyfriend Ricardo hitting her son Pepe, and then he slammed him into the wall. But as Yadira tried to push her way into the bedroom to help her son, Ricardo tried to close the door on her. But Yadira could still see into the room, and she saw that Ricardo was now choking her son Pepe. Frantic to help her son, she pushed her way into the bedroom, flung herself on Ricardo, and began to attack him. All the while, she was screaming at him, "You're killing him! You're killing him!" A struggle ensued between Yadira and Ricardo, and she would end up with injuries to her neck, leg, and she would also get a broken arm. Even though she was fighting incredibly hard to get her son out of Ricardo's grip, Ricardo was not letting go of Pepe. In a desperate attempt to get the beating to stop, Yadira even took the couple's newborn son and placed the baby on top of Pepe. But that didn't work either, and as far as I know, the newborn did not get hurt at all. Ricardo would only end up removing his hand from Pepe's neck when he was no longer breathing. Meanwhile, Pepe's 9-year-old sister had called the police when she realized her brother was being attacked. She told the 911 dispatcher that her brother was lying in a puddle of blood, not breathing, and that her mother had tried to help him, but she was unable to. During the call, the dispatcher would also hear Yadira in the background, and she was saying what sounded like, "He's killing me." The police would end up arriving to the house at 7:53 p.m. And when their knocks on the door went unanswered, They breached the door after they had heard screaming coming from inside. When they did, they found 3-year-old Pepe badly beaten and bloodied, and they found Yadira pretty badly beaten as well. Pepe was rushed to the hospital, but sadly, shortly after, he would succumb to his injuries. 39-year-old Ricardo was taken into custody right at the scene. His clothing and hands were covered in blood. Ricardo was charged with domestic battery as well as aggravated first-degree murder, with the special circumstance of the victim being particularly vulnerable due to his age. Ricardo was held on a $1.5 million bail. Once he was down at the police station, officers observed that Ricardo had several injuries to his hands and possibly a broken right hand. Not only had Ricardo strangled and beaten Pepe, leaving bruising all over his little body, but there had also been a knife wound found to the boy's head. The weapon that was used, a now broken knife, would end up being found by the crimes unit after they had spent 12 hours at the crime scene conducting their investigation. The broken knife was found in Ricardo's bedroom, while the broken off piece of blade was found on the bathroom sink. Police also found multiple bloodstains on the walls of Ricardo's bedroom and a large hole in the drywall the size of Pepe's head. But when the authorities spoke with Ricardo, he said he had no recollection of killing Pepe. He said all he remembered was eating dinner, and then suddenly he was in handcuffs. Unbeknownst to Yadira and the rest of Pepe's family, Ricardo actually had a very violent history and a criminal record in Oregon. Ricardo's violent temper went all the way back to his childhood, when he had actually tortured and killed a few cats. He had also been charged with attempted murder and second-degree assault back in 2007, after he had reportedly choked an ex-girlfriend right outside the Rogue Valley Medical Center. He had then dumped her into nearby bushes, and this was in the middle of the day, in a parking lot with multiple witnesses. That is the scariest kind of violent person, one who doesn't care who's watching. And the 25-year-old woman who Ricardo attacked would end up spending several days in a coma and intensive care in the hospital. The attack to this woman had happened because Ricardo believed that she was cheating on him, much like his belief that Pepe's mother was cheating on him. Ricardo had also been verbally and physically abusive to this girlfriend throughout the length of their relationship. He was also controlling and tried to keep her from all of her family and friends. The attempted murder charge from this incident was dropped as part of a plea deal, however. And Ricardo pleaded guilty to just the assault charge. He was then sentenced to 6 years in jail and 3 years of probation. Had he been convicted of the attempted murder charge, his prison sentence would have only been extended an additional 20 months. Ricardo had actually just gotten out of jail for this incident in June of 2013, and he was actually still on supervised release from Oregon's Department of Corrections at the time of Pepe's murder. Pepe's grandfather, Fernando Cisneros Garcia, said that his daughter's boyfriend Ricardo was always strict with Pepe, but he had never hurt him that he knew of. The entire family had thought that Ricardo was a good guy, but for a very long time, he had hidden from everybody who he truly was. Pepe's grandfather, however, did say that it seemed like Ricardo didn't necessarily care for the little boy. He would often get very annoyed by Pepe's screaming and crying and couldn't handle his behavior. But Pepe's 9-year-old sister would actually say that their mother, Yadira, knew that her boyfriend Ricardo hated Pepe. And Fernando would also say about his grandson, "My grandson was a little angel. He was so nice and happy. He was the life in the house for everybody. Everybody loved him." The grandfather also spoke about how his 9-year-old granddaughter was a hero for calling 911 before things got even worse. Now, given the horrific crime that had taken place there, Pepe's family did not want to return back to their home and were looking to rent out a new one. However, they didn't quite have the funds, especially after paying for Pepe's funeral. So, the community would help the family with moving expenses by setting up an online fundraiser where they would raise over $11,000. T-shirts with Pepe's picture on them were also sold, and the Battlegrounds high school softball team went around with money collection jars looking for donations to help out Pepe's family. In August of 2016, Ricardo formally waived his right to a jury trial, and he opted for the judge to instead decide his fate. So, in January of 2018, it was left up to the judge to convict and sentence Ricardo after hearing all of the evidence presented against him. There was no question in anyone's mind that Ricardo's intent had been to kill Pepe. He was angry at him that night because he had been screaming and crying, and he couldn't deal with him. But Ricardo knew that Pepe had developmental disabilities that had made him nonverbal, and he often communicated by crying and screaming. Ricardo had also been repeatedly told by other people to be more patient with the boy, but he didn't care, the prosecution said. The prosecution also believed that not only did Ricardo kill Pepe because he didn't like him, but also to get back at his mother Yadira as the ultimate form of punishment. I assume because he thought that she was cheating on him. The defense knew that they couldn't argue against the fact that their client had killed Pepe. They instead were trying to argue that it wasn't a planned murder. They said, at best, it was second-degree murder and not first-degree murder. The defense explained that Ricardo was tired from working long hours, was fed up with Pepe's behavior, and he was also stressed due to the extreme financial pressure he was under. He was even considering bankruptcy at that point. They said that their client had just snapped under the weight of everything. The court also heard that Ricardo had said during his attack on Pepe that he was going to keep the boy quiet because he was sick of him, which meant that Ricardo recognized that he was going to kill Pepe. He had also threatened to kill Pepe's mother too if she didn't stop intervening. Maggie Callery, a special education teacher, testified during Ricardo's trial. She said that Pepe had been recommended to an early intervention program in October of 2015 due to concerns over his behavior and communication skills. This teacher had met with Yadira 16 times between October of 2015 and May of 2016 in order to help Pepe advance in his development. In December of 2015, the teacher had spoken with Ricardo during one of her visits. Ricardo reportedly asked her if Pepe's brain was different and asked about autism. They also discussed whether enforcing stricter discipline, like spanking, would help Pepe's behavior. But the teacher, Maggie, had told Ricardo that Pepe would not respond to physical discipline the same way a typical child would. She used an example in which Pepe's mother spanked him once, and he responded by smiling and laughing. She instead suggested setting boundaries for Pepe and offered alternative methods of discipline. Text messages between Ricardo and his brother discussing Pepe were also brought up during the trial. These messages had taken place in 2016, 2 months prior to Pepe's murder. In one message Ricardo had written to his brother, "We ended up bad because of punk-ass Pepe. Little fucking ass always yelling and wanting everything. So I yelled at him and told him to shut the fuck up, LOL. He started crying hella bad, like someone killing him. Ironic." Later in this text message exchange, Ricardo had written that Pepe's family could see that he didn't like the little boy and treated him differently because of it. He told his brother that he would just buy the family stuff in order to gain their favor instead. Then, a former co-worker of Ricardo's took the stand. He testified that Ricardo had confided in him about his dislike for Pepe and his relationship issues with Yadira. Ricardo reportedly told his coworker that Pepe was, quote, no good, and he would cry for no reason. The coworker said that Ricardo had told him about a time that the family was at the store and Pepe kept saying hi to everybody. Ricardo would tell these people that Pepe was autistic, and then he used offensive terms to describe his developmental delay. The coworker also said that Ricardo was becoming increasingly paranoid that his girlfriend was cheating on him. He often tried to leave his shift early to check on her, and while he was at work, he spent a substantial amount of time on his cell phone, calling and texting her. Ricardo had even told his coworker that if he ever caught Yadira cheating on him, he would kill her. Also during this hearing, Ricardo's defense presented the judge with his client's mental health report. It said that Ricardo had problems with impulse control, and he suffered from intermittent explosive disorder, which is when a person's angry outburst is grossly disproportionate to the stressor. So he's an asshole, is what I think they're trying to say. He also said that his client had suffered from a traumatic brain injury when he was 8, and sometimes explosive anger can be a symptom of a traumatic brain injury. After hearing the arguments from the prosecution and the defense, the judge told the prosecution that he did not agree with one of the motives they presented. The judge said that there was no evidence to support their theory that Ricardo had killed Pepe to get back at Yadira. The judge then said that Ricardo's relationship with Pepe was not good, but complicated. There were times that he had tried to understand the boy, and then there were times that he just hated him. He believed that it was much more likely that Pepe's murder had stemmed from what the defense said, that Ricardo's building frustration, fatigue, and financial pressures had caused him to snap. He then found him guilty of first-degree murder with an aggravating factor. Ricardo was also found guilty of second-degree assault for the injuries that he inflicted on Pepe's mother, Yadira. At Ricardo's sentencing hearing, Pepe's mother said through an interpreter that she doesn't feel like justice was served. She said, "His life is worth way more than all the years this man can spend in a cell." Yadira and other family members in attendance wore Justice for Pepe shirts featuring a large photo of the smiling boy. When it came time for Ricardo Gutierrez to address the court, he asked Pepe's family for forgiveness. He said he didn't intend to hurt Pepe. He had just been tired and hearing voices, though this is the first time he said anything about hearing voices. So, I doubt it. Now it's just excuses. He claims that he thinks about what happened to Pepe every single day, and then he added, "I don't know how to understand, Papito. Please forgive me." Due to the fact that the judge had determined that Pepe was particularly vulnerable due to his age, he was able to tack on another 16 years to the 29 years he gave Ricardo for the murder conviction, so 45 years total. He's also not to have any contact with any minor children, including his own. Pepe's funeral was held on May 27, 2016 at St. John the Evangelist Catholic Church in Vancouver, Washington. Later that same night, May 27th, roughly 250 people packed a battleground neighborhood street to pay their respects to Jose Pepe Castillo Cisneros, an act the boy's grandfather called a profound act of kindness. Friends, family, neighbors, and other well-wishers bearing candles gathered around the home for a vigil, the home where friends and strangers had been adding flowers, stuffed animals, and candles to an impromptu memorial to remember Pepe and support his family. Well, thank you for listening to Pepe's story today. As horrible as this story is, I'm glad for once his mother stepped up and tried to do anything she could to protect her child. Instead of like so many other moms that I talk about that just sit back and watch and let it happen. Though she did know that her boyfriend hated her son, and I'm not sure how she could be with somebody knowing that. And if she did, in fact, know that he hated Pepe so much, she should never have asked him to move in to begin with. So if you do like true crime and you want to hear it from me, then don't forget to hit that subscribe button below and turn on your notifications too, so you'll know when I upload a new video, which is about 2 times every week. Thanks for watching A Wicked World today. Until next time, take care guys. Bye. Thank you to all the patrons of A Wicked World. Now, there's even more of A Wicked World on Patreon. So check it out at patreon.com/awickedworld or use the Patreon app. You'll have access to exclusive videos each month and more. Any support truly helps to make sure the victims never get forgotten and to highlight the shortcomings of society associated with each case. Do you have a suggestion for a case you'd like to see me cover? If so, send me an email at awickedworldtruecrime@gmail.com.